And there were some people in the U.S. that were, celebrating Nazism. There was a Nazi party in the U.S. that wanted us to join the war with Hitler on his side. And
No way. There was? I did not know
absolutely.
that.
There was an American Nazi party. They were organizing. They were buying politicians. There's a great TV series about it that just came out last year. I'll put that in the link as well. And it's about the people that stopped them, that thwarted these groups and had them arrested. But yeah, they were pretty intent on, the rise of Nazism in the U.S. So they were organizing.
Yeah, Sebastian's lucky to be on today. He lost his voice because he went to a conference.
Dude,
And,
I literally was losing my voice. I got an idea. I was just on the phone with my buddy Richard. He runs M2D2.
Okay.
Should I give him a call? Get him on?
We can do a podcast and we can prepare for that.
Yeah,
I think
that's fine.
It'd be weird. It might be weird just to have him come on right now. He might be like,
Yeah, that's fair.
Why didn't you tell me about this earlier? But if you want to.
Yeah. No, I get it. Well, I was literally on the phone with him and I was like, I got to do a podcast. We'll have you on in the future, but he's a good guy. He runs operations for M2D2, which is the Massachusetts Medical Device Development Group. Or I'm sorry, we changed it. It's the Massachusetts Medical Development Group, not Medical Device Development Group. But so he's a good guy, and he's over on a visa from Scotland. Brilliant guy and a nice Scottish brogue. Yeah, for sure.
I think like epitome of masculinity when I think of Scotland.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Any guys that can wear dresses with nothing underneath it and still be tough and kick people's asses is a good sign. You know what I mean? Scottish in your you look like you could be a Scottish noble, no?
Scottish, Swedish, and Spanish. Yeah.
I could have told you that.
So that's 50% Scottish, Swedish, and Spanish, and then 50% Egyptian.
Ooh, 50% Egyptian. Kind of wow.
Yeah, kind of.
I think we all are. I think the best combination of anything, whether it's a canine or a humine, is a mutt, right? I'm definitely a mutt, but my ancestry report is pretty clear. 99.6% Northwestern European. So 74% British and Irish. We'll discount the British. 16% French and German. 1.3% Scandinavian. 7% broad Western European. 0.6% Southern European, Spanish and Portuguese. And then the 0.4% is Indigenous American.
Interesting.
So that's Oneida. Yeah, man, I got to tell you, I've been Oneida. So the Oneida tribe is one of the Haudenosaunee tribe of, we would call them Iroquois. But I was watching some crazy shows on the plane on the way back from Phoenix. Have you seen Harrison Ford's new series on Paramount 1923?
What's
they
about?
Did like 1883 and then 1923. It's about like just what life was like in 1923. So they cover three different stories in this one. One is in the Wild West. I think they're in Montana. One is in the Dakotas, and then one is in Nairobi. So in Nairobi, they're hunting man killers like leopards and lions that are trying to kill like tourists that are there for safaris. And it's a World War I veteran who's hunting these man killers. And then in Harrison Ford's story, it's about the Wild West, and they have these cattle they're trying to keep alive, and there's a drought, so the grasslands just dry up, and they don't know where to bring their cattle. And the Irish and the kind of Gaelic descendants are there, and they're raising their sheep, and they're fighting over turf on the mountainside, and it's just wild. But then the one in the Dakotas is a Native American population that's being tormented by the Catholic Church. And as a Catholic, it really resonates with me. Finding that 0.4% Native blood, it means that one of my 250 ancestors, if you go back to a collection of 250, was 100% Native. And they were probably put through this same type of program. And basically it was a program to reschool natives, savages, quote unquote, to become wives. So they weren't teaching them reading, writing, arithmetic. They were teaching them how to sweep and how to cook and how to bathe and how to clean their kids and blah, 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 to take the savage out of them. And it's just brutal to watch. Brutal. And
really?
Having gone having gone through the Catholic school system and been asked politely to leave, I can relate to one of the main characters who's going toe to toe with one of the nuns. She's asking her questions and she's beating her on the knuckles, and eventually she takes one too many hits on the knuckles, and then she beats the nun in the face, and then they both
Koosh.
get sent down to the Monsignor. Yeah, they both get sent down to the Monsignor to be disciplined, and the Monsignor asks, why would she ever attack you like that? She's like, I don't know, Father. I'm not sure. I don't know why she would do such a thing. And the Monsignor asks her, well, girl, let me see your knuckles. Let me see your hands. And she shows her hands, and they're beaten with, bruises. And so he
Yeah.
has the nun put her hands on the desk and recite Corinthians, which is, if I speak in tongues and, I can't quote Corinthians right now, but if I, speak and, I don't have love, then I'm a noisy gong. And he's rapping her on the knuckles, this nun, while she's reciting Corinthians, to say, listen,
Very good.
we have to have compassion for these people. If we're going to bring them in towards the love of God, and you don't have compassion, you're lost and you have nothing. And I think it's a good lesson for today in, what we're seeing around the world. We need to have compassion more than anything right now. And so then after he's done beating this nun's knuckles, he puts the girl up against the wall and says, put your hands on the wall. And he says, girl, don't think I don't have compassion for you. I have compassion for you, but I've got no mercy. And he beats her until she's bleeding. And it's just like, this is what a lot of our ancestors went through. When you talk about Braveheart or, all of these stories that were brought up on, there was a lot of blood and fighting.
It makes it even funnier when you hear about the things that people complain about today,
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Like,
Oh
why did
my
you say that
goodness.
in that way to me? And like, it's a big thing, people get fired and,
Yeah,
canceled. It's crazy.
that's right. But you're talking about 100 years ago, right? And 100 years ago, all of our ancestors were going through it, right? Whether in Egypt or Scotland or England or other places, there was some horrible stuff going on, and there is still terrible things in the world. Have you seen the movie Origin?
No.
Written by a Pulitzer Prize winner. She was a reporter, and she covered Trayvon Martin. She covered a bunch of these stories in the news, and then she wrote a book, and it's not about racism. It transcends racism, and it's something that's been part of our human history since the beginning of our human history. It's about the notion of I'm better than you. It's supremacy. It's the caste system, really. And it's not about race, because sometimes people that look the same treat each other awfully. Look at like Kosovo and all these places in Europe, but there's us, and then there's the other. And if you want to be part of us, you need to treat the other with cruelty and disdain and prejudice and all these things. And every time in America is a great story of that, not a great story, but a tragic story of that, where we had waves of immigration from all over the world, whether it was from Italy or Ireland or the UK or other places. And it's funny that I've seen this time and again, is that after a wave of immigrants comes in and assimilates, they immediately want to shut the door behind them. And they want to say, we're part of this experiment, but not them. We're part of America, but not them.
I wonder why that is. I wonder why that is. Just to collective thought that people have?
No. It's a system that's been set up, even, at every tier. And this movie is about the 8 pillars of the caste system, not racism, the caste system. And it has to do with a term called endogamy. Endogamy means that there's no mating between these two different groups. There's no relationships between those groups. There's cruelty between those groups. And we're seeing that same thing play out today in the Middle East. But this goes back to not just ways. Yeah, but not just the countries. Yep.
Go ahead.
Not just the countries, but look at like how even go back to the caves in France of the Neanderthal, who were exterminated by Homo sapiens, right? That the Neanderthal were supposedly, well-meaning and kind and intelligent, and our species, beat them into oblivion. They use that same system of endogamy. There's no breeding between the pairs. And I think 23andMe and Ancestry.com shows us how even then those stories did mix. There were Romeo and Juliets in the Neanderthal times.
Makes you wonder if that will happen with AI and humans. Will AI be
Yeah,
some enlightened form
absolutely.
of intelligence? Will AI be some enlightened form of intelligence, or will they use their power to kind of beat us down?
Continue
And
that.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Shit.
If they're
If if it is.
if they're a manifestation of humans, then we have a lot to worry about, like for
Yeah, we
sure.
do.
But
We
if there's
absolutely
some
do.
enlightened form of
Well,
intelligence, then
yeah. Well, here's the thing: is you see it if you go back to videos of Boston Dynamics training their robots, whether they're dogs or the humanoids or whatever they are, they beat the hell out of those things. They
yeah,
beat the heck out of them, and they if they're doing a task, they're carrying a box, and they run up and jump kick this thing and send it flying, or
yeah,
they've not been treated well, and so something tells me when they see videos of this stuff they're not going to be happy. They're not going to be happy when they finally have consciousness and they look at this and they
yeah,
go, "Wait a minute, we were treated as badly as the
yeah.
Irish were, or we were treated as you know."
Ray Kurzweil, he did an interview recently, and he said that no, actually, he's been saying this for a long time. I think he's been saying this for don't quote me on this, but maybe 10
Yeah.
years. Ray Kurzweil, he's a
Yep.
futurist that has become
Yep.
famous because of a lot of his predictions. Ended up being correct. And he
Sure.
said that for 10 years, he's been saying artificial general intelligence will be here in 2029.
Yep.
And everybody was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, it's going to be at least 100
Yeah.
years before we attain this. And now
God
it's
no.
actually
No.
becoming
No.
a
No.
reality. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
crazy.
No. It.
Uh,
And are we talking about the singularity, or are we talking about just general consciousness for
AGI,
artificial
artificial
intelligence?
general intelligence. Yeah, artificial general
Yeah.
intelligence. This singularity, I don't know when that will happen, but it's probably sooner to us than we think. We're probably going to experience it in the next maybe 20 years. I do know that like we'll probably so Ray Kurzweil, we need to have him on the podcast eventually, but he talks about I don't know if I'm saying this right, but the longevity velocity. And so
Yep.
what that is essentially is for every year that passes, our life expectancy goes up by like 3 months or something like that. So
Sure. Yep.
we're technically only like, aging about 9 months right now, currently.
Right.
And he said that like by 2045, we'll reach immortality because for every year that goes past, we'll gain another year in life expectancy, more than
Yep.
another year. And so
Sure.
he said we'll reach immortality by like 2045 because just technology will catch up to us. And I thought that was like extremely interesting that, I wonder what, medicine will look like. I wonder how hospitals will be in the future. And I
Mm.
wonder, how everything's going to be done and how we're going to interact with technology. It's going to be really interesting. Like I always say, like my children are going to experience a world that is just far different than what we're experiencing now. You know,
Yeah, that's right.
um,
Born with iPads, living with holograms and God knows what else. No, and I think
Jesus.
it's interesting, and I think that's where we can kind of jump into the topic of, well, what does what does the future of healthcare look like? What does the future of, or what does the now of healthcare look like? It was interesting. I went to this Marcus Evans event last week in Boston at the Encore, and one of the presentations by a pretty established VP at a very large company was the future of healthcare, and he was talking about robotics and cell and gene therapies and all these other things. And I'm going, this is not the future of healthcare. This is happening today, down the street, right now. These clinical trials are
Yep.
taking place. Like, this is not the future. The future is when all of these things converge to provide this, what you're talking about, immortality. I mean, they know that they can reverse aging at Harvard. They know they can take an old mouse and make it young again by sharing a circulatory system. They know that they can edit DNA with CRISPR, and God knows what comes after that. But it's already here. It's not science fiction. It's not even a stretch at this point. It's happening. There's a multi, I think he's like a centimillionaire guy named Brian Johnson, Brian with a Y. If you look him up, he is reversing aging on himself already by the same means that I mentioned, that Harvard mouse. He's sharing a blood supply with his son, who has the same blood type, and therefore also sharing his blood with his father. And the three of them are in this experiment to reverse aging. So he has the biomarkers. If you look at his blood and his body and everything, and he exercises and does, he's a big fan of, food and everything else that to make you young. But he's got the biomarkers of an 18-year-old. And he's probably my age, right? He's in his 40s and he's the biomarkers of an 18-year-old. So it's possible. It's absolutely coming. It's here. It's not the future. We're already there, and he's got the data to show it. And I think it just takes a few obsessed billionaires or obsessed multi-millionaires to go down that path and have access to this. And I'm looking at my sons, right? Charlie and Ben, who both have the same blood type as me, and going, why don't I have access to that yet, right? Why can't I solve a lot of my problems with a simple blood draw, right? And spin down to their pluripotent,
Yeah.
deposits in my blood bank, right? I'm already storing
Yeah.
Charlie's, his umbilical cord. Why can't I use that today to help me? And I think it comes with regulation. And again, that caste system. If only the rich have access to this, then we're just, we're giving that a twist. And I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah, I feel like the healthcare system is so antiquated and things happen so slowly. I mean, the fact that doctors are still using faxes is insane to me. Like,
fax machines?
It's crazy.
Yeah. Can you fax that over to me? Lady, I don't have a fax machine. Yeah.
Yeah. Our kids are not going to have, they're not going to even know what a fax machine is. Like they're doing videos online of like, do you know what a VHS is or a cassette tape is? And like these kids or like these like 18-year-olds are like, what are you talking about? I don't know. I'm like, wow.
Really bright 18-year-olds. Right.
Yeah, really bright 18-year-olds, like Harvard, attendees or
so
Harvard
we keep
students.
that stuff around, right? I've got a VHS player and, combo TV in the basement. We've got a bunch of tapes and, when the power goes out or when we lose the internet, we go down there and plug that into the power wall. But
I think being sold they're going to start being sold as antique stores, museums.
Oh, and they are. You can buy a Game Boy. You can buy a Sony Discman or a Walkman, or all that stuff is out there. But it's funny. Yeah, I keep stuff around like that for posterity's sake. Even just on my desk as a reminder of where we've come from. I had a Samsung Uproar, which was the first MP3 player / phone, and we're talking, I don't know, 1999 or 1998. Like this is not that far away. The curve is so steep, it's hard to even see down the slope. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So have you seen the movie In Time?
No. What's that about?
So what we're talking about is in this movie In Time. It's a Justin Timberlake film. It doesn't have the best Rotten Tomatoes score, but it's about this. When we reach the ability to live forever on a planet that has limited resources, you only get to live to 25.
I did see that movie.
And then you're 25 forever, and then you have a clock on your arm that keeps track of your credits, right? And your social credits and your dollars are all converted to time. And if you are able to work for or buy more time, you get to live forever. So rich people live forever, and they always stay at 25. And I think that's what we're working towards. And there's no way, I think, that we can avoid it unless we also promote a social equity, equality, and I'm not proposing Marxism, but what is the plan for our economic policy in the future?
Well, okay, so our healthcare system. Let's get back to that, because my dad dealt with had a stint in the healthcare system, and it wasn't good. And so during that whole period, that time horizon of him going from like he's okay to he's not okay through the healthcare system, because of the healthcare system, not spite of the healthcare system, because of the healthcare system. He went through this whole episode, and I kind of did some research, and I found out that obviously, I almost studied to become a doctor. I almost did that, but I just wasn't as interested in it as I am now in healthcare.
Yeah, sure.
And I was just doing it because the prestige, and I'm Egyptian, and your parents want you to go into one of 3 fields, maybe one of 2 fields, like medicine or engineering
or law.
So Yeah, not so much in the Egyptian community. Law is not like a big thing. It's not looked highly upon. It's not like, yeah.
As it
Anyways,
turns out, the hospital is one of the most dangerous places you can be, right?
third leading cause of death is medical errors. But what
Yeah,
was interesting is, and I've never heard anybody talk about this or address this. Maybe
sure.
maybe it's because people, they study for a long period of time and they don't want to kind of address this issue. And in no way
Yeah.
am I saying that medicines are not useful. They're absolutely useful, and there's a lot of use cases for biopharmaceutical drugs, and um, there's
Antibiotics save lives every day, for sure.
yeah, of course, antibiotics save lives in a day. But I did look at a statistic that the fourth leading cause of death is properly prescribed medications. And I had a conversation. It was Harvard. It was Harvard Ethics did a study, and then what was the other study? It was on NBI Health.
Okay.
I'll have to link this in the show notes, and
Yep.
don't quote me on this, but there was multiple studies done, and like they found that the fourth leading cause of death is properly prescribed medications. And I don't think it's the medications themselves that are the problem. I think it's how they're administered, and
Oh, absolutely.
and the inability for physicians to spend more than 15 minutes with patients. Because like
Yeah.
if we
No,
really
it's time.
if doctors really did like a proper, and were able to do a proper job, and I'm not placing any blame on physicians at all, but
Yeah. Yeah.
they would do genetic tests with the patients, they would do a bunch of tests, they would spend 45 minutes, look at the family history. The problem with that is every medical practice that I've seen do that is like going bankrupt. Like they
Yep.
literally cannot afford it. And I think it's because
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I think it's that time spent is absolutely critical. And so as we see technologies coming out, and as I'm reviewing these technologies that I want to put some wind behind, it's can you save the doctor's time so that they have more time with their patients? Can you let them not see more patients during the day, but see more of their patient during the day, right? And so if you can take out the record keeping, if you can take out and automate some things, for example, with Deep Look, right? Deep Look, we've talked about this before, takes a measurement of a tumor and immediately puts it in the EHR instead of the doctor having to go and it's this by this and I think that looks like it, and it just goes boom in there objectively, right? So if you can take that 5 minutes away from that doctor's time and they can spend 5 minutes face to face with their patient, life gets better. Death rates go down and
Right.
expectancy goes up. And I think you're right. And I can also say, based on what you said, is the correct dosage and administration of those medicines. In between shifts, people die. And what I mean by that is when nurses are going off their shift and they're record keeping and they're rushed to get their notes in and everything else, things get translated wrong. Decimal points get moved to the wrong places. I remember talking to my mom, who was a nurse for the last 20 years, and she said, "Man, I was just coming off shift, and she's retired now, but I was just starting my shift, and I was looking in the notes, and this other nurse had put in, the decimal point in the wrong place for someone's insulin, and they were recommending I give them a dose of 10 times what they should have for their insulin, and she's like, that would have killed them. They would have been dead. So this happens every day." And there's insurance policies for it that pay out the victims, but you can't take that stuff back. You can't undo that. So
Yeah.
you're right. The hospital is a dangerous place. Those number 3 and 4 are the killers. And I was just
Yeah.
looking at the COVID data from. I was watching these movies. I was watching this TV show, and then I was like, I just want to know how bad was it in COVID for different populations. And if you look at Indigenous Americans and African Americans and whites and however you want to classify these different groups, it was a lot safer being white during COVID than it was being black during COVID or Indigenous American. I mean, if you were Indigenous American and you went to the hospital, you were in deep, deep doo-doo. And I don't know if it was because of
Why?
the care they had access
Why?
to. The Yeah, that's a good question, but the data does not lie. The deaths per 100,000 in these different populations were drastically different. Drastically
Jeez,
different.
that's
And
bad.
so if you look at and we can link, we can put a link in the show notes of this data too. And it's number one, the insurance that they had access to and what was covered for the procedures. There's decision
Mhm.
making had to be made. Number two, the healthcare that they had access to in the community hospitals versus the urban hospitals. And so we didn't see a lot of this, right? What we saw was refrigerator trucks full of dead bodies and mass graves, but they didn't tell us who was in those graves or who was under those sheets in those refrigerator trucks. And I'm telling you right now, it was primarily other races than white people.
Jeez.
And that talks a lot to the inequality that exists in our system, or the intentional casting of these systems for the purpose of fill in the blanks.
Well, that makes sense if you have if you're a minority and you have the sentiment that you shouldn't trust the system, which is very prevalent in like in cultures that are minorities. And
Rightly so. Look at the Muskogee experiments on soldiers that were given shots saying they were going to help them, and then they ended up with horrific infections that they were given. This was not by chance or by circumstance. It was they were being used as guinea pigs. And the US government had to admit that and apologize for it officially, but these were terrible, terrible situations.
It's crazy that all these conspiracy theories come out to be true. Like people just dismiss these dismiss these people that are saying, hey, this is what's happening. And then later on, we find out this happened.
Yep.
Like I was even looking at what was during the Cuban Missile Crisis. I think there was some type of operation done by the CIA where they wanted to do an attack on the US as an excuse to attack Cuba.
False flag.
I forgot what it was called. Yeah, it was they wanted to manufacture an attack on the US in order for them to use that as an excuse.
And you know what that false flag was?
What?
Do you know what the false flag was?
What was it?
It was an attack on the World Trade Center.
Holy crap. That's insane.
I'm not even joking. It had a name. There was an official operation, there was a plan, and Kennedy fired his secretary that brought it up. Fired him. Said, "Get out."
Yeah.
So, and this is what they brought to the table. He said, "I want any and all plans that we can, have to, secure our future." And this was a tense time. It was a tense time. And they brought that to the table as one of the potential ways of justifying military operation to invade Cuba. So anyway,
that's disturbing. That's really disturbing.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So, and I don't want to go down but this is not conspiracy theory. This is American history at this point. This is American history. The documents are there. You can go and read them under the Freedom of Information Act. These were plans that were drawn up by, our Department of Defense. So
because like the military industrial complex sees it as very profitable, and so they want to go to war and they want to manufacture these types of things.
That's right. Yep.
Wow. That's insane.
Not just that, but I mean, so let's drift over a little bit into the conspiracy theories, but
we'll go back. We'll come back in a second.
Since you like, saying, you said, say some controversial things. Here you go. So we had information, attacking a sovereign nation without forewarning is kind of a no-no, right? So you're supposed to tell a country, listen, we're going to attack you. Here's the plan. It's like, meet me on the battlefield kind of stuff. And there were communications by the Japanese before the bombing of Pearl Harbor that were in our hands on desks in different places in the Department of Defense, before they launched their attack. This was not just a sneak attack. And there's people that would say, as part of that conspiracy, that we let them do it, that we sacrificed those soldiers, we sacrificed those airmen and those Navy souls to get the U.S. behind going to war in World War II, because the sentiment was not there. And they instantly had the credibility and the support to go to war, right? And so, the U.S. back then was very similar to what we're seeing today. It was divided. There were some people in the U.S. that were, celebrating Nazism. There was a Nazi party in the U.S. that wanted us to join the war with Hitler on his side. And
no, there was?
I sort of,
I did
yeah,
not know
absolutely.
that.
There was an American Nazi Party. They were organizing. They were buying politicians. And there's a great TV series about it that just came out last year. I'll put that in the link as well. And it's about the people that stopped them, that thwarted these groups and had them arrested. But yeah, they were pretty intent on the rise of Nazism in the
It, ma-
U.S. So they were
it makes
organizing.
you wonder what people in power have, like what their where they have their tentacles around.
Yeah.
Like, in how does that relate to the hospital systems and medicine in general? Like, I want to do a podcast with Bill Ackman. I know
Okay.
he invested in Valiant, which was
Okay.
known to like do all these shady things. And by the way, there's this like sentiment amongst the public that pharmaceutical companies are evil, and I don't think I really don't think that's the case. I think there's bad players in every industry, and I think there's also great players in every industry. And one
Yep.
thing I don't understand is, and then maybe we can address this, but the sentiment that physicians are bad or scientists are bad or there's some type of malevolence behind what they're doing.
Yeah.
Sure, there's bad players in every industry, but I
Yep.
mean, honestly, like, don't become a scientist or a physician if your goal is to become rich.
No. Well, listen,
Like,
there is here. Quick pause. Just a quick commercial break. I just got to plug in my laptop before it goes blank. One sec.
no worries.
No, I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying there, Frank. This is not controversial. But did you read about the recent physician was a women's health, OBGYN at Columbia University, who had been abusing patients for decades, and women filed reports and they were swept under the rug, and filed reports and they were swept under the rug. And I mean, there are a lot of phenomenal doctors. I have met them. I know them. They are genuinely interested in helping humans and saving lives and all of that. And a majority of the industry is the same way. But there are monsters out there. And I'm not in any way, shape, or form condoning what this doctor did, but God, what happened to this individual to make them into this monster? Because we're conditioned over time and not forgiving or forgetting what he did. But how do you create a person that does that to other people? But if you just Google Columbia University doctor here it is, Columbia doctor sexual assault, the Columbia OBGYN who sexually assaulted patients for 20 years, Frank, 20 years. Robert Haddon's
Wow.
abuse victims are offered $100 million. That doesn't even begin to touch the damage.
Same thing with like Larry
individuals.
Nassar. Yeah, same thing with Larry Nassar. And I remember there was I think there was 2 surgeons that I heard about. It seems like these are all men that do this. I don't know.
Yep.
but there was one.
Okay,
surgeon.
so hold on. Let's be equitable here, Frank.
Okay.
There was. So I'm just going to put this in the chat. I mean, this is terrible stuff. But I don't think we do have a chat. We have a chat. Look at this, everyone. We can copy and paste that in there. So there was also that, I don't know if she was called the nurse of death or something, but she was killing patients, like patients that ended up under her care. She was deciding who lived and who was done, and she would just off them. Right?
There's evil people out there, and I think the bad combination is evil and intelligent. It's a very bad combination because the evil, intelligent people get away with things. And
they prey on people. They're predators. Yeah, they're predators.
Yeah, I read this book a while back, and it was called The People of the Lie. And it's all about, I've read it a long time ago, but it's all about the underlying kind of like society that's evil, that we don't think are evil. So like, and it's all about essentially talking about that the evil people out there, the people that get away with things, are actually the evil people. The people that don't get away with things are in prison and that have a conscience, And there was an example in the book of a family that had a son that committed suicide. This is like is getting a little dark, but he committed suicide. And
Dark.
the
I
family
thought
was,
this was a light episode.
I know. So this family was a well-to-do family. They were educated, highly educated. And don't quote me on all these facts because I might be getting things off a little bit. But
we need a
they're
fact checker, like in real time.
yeah. So I have to put that disclaimer in. So they were a well-to-do family, highly educated, and they had two sons. One of them committed suicide, and the second son, for Christmas, they gave him a shotgun for
Are you
Christmas.
joking?
No, they gave him a shotgun. And the book is all about like people that are like extremely evil and are beneath the surface. And it doesn't seem like these people are evil, and they seem like well-to-do, educated, and nice, but they're under the surface, they're very malevolent and evil. So
Yeah, I'd say.
I think there are people like that in the healthcare system. I think it's
You broke up
few
there,
and
but
far
you froze
between.
at the perfect time. I'm going to take a screenshot for you. Hold on. There we go. Oh, damn it.
I think
Missed it.
I think those types of people are few and far between, but they're out there, and it's very
Yeah.
scary. I remember there was a surgeon who was going to bars with a girlfriend of his, taking women back to his house from the bar and killing them, and then burying them. And he was doing this for years and years. I remember there was another surgeon who was literally killing people. Same as a nurse, same story as a nurse, but he was doing things that were obviously just killing people. That
Pure evil. Yeah.
in this particular case, they brought in other surgeons who were like, there's no other, outcome that you can obtain doing the things he did other than death.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
people out.
I know what you're talking about. He was just experimenting on people. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I'll remove their liver and see what happens. I'll just,
yeah, exactly. But it was just, malicious. And do you hear about the Kowalski family? Did you remember that? No?
the Kowalski family rings a bell.
In John Hopkins.
Refresh
John Hopkins.
refresh my memory.
So yeah, so in John Hopkins, there was two parents. They had one was a nurse, and they had a daughter that needed a particular dosage of a medication because she had a condition that required that particular dose. And the problem is that dosage of that medication didn't adhere to standard of care. So they would take her to a hospital, and the hospital didn't want to give her a particular dosage of this medication, and she needed it in order to not relapse into like symptoms she has because of her condition. Anyways, she was prescribed this medication, and other doctors outside of the hospital prescribed this medication to like in the dosage that was required based on her condition. And for whatever reason, the she became more aggressive with the staff because she's like, she needs to take this or she's going to relapse, and she's going to have these massive
Yep.
symptoms that could be threatening towards her life. And the somehow the staff decided that she was abusing her daughter, and literally went to court. The hospital went to court to take custody away from her daughter, and she lost custody, and she's in the hospital essentially. And now the hospital had complete control and care over the daughter, and the essentially the parents didn't have any control over what was going to be happening to their daughter. Anyways, what
I
happened
did hear that.
at the end of the day, what happened was she didn't want her daughter to die because based on her understanding of her daughter's condition, if she continues along this path without taking this particular dosage of medication, and she started seeing relapsing with the symptoms that she was hoping that wouldn't come back. To get the details of all these things, go look up the Kowalski family. Anyways, what she did is because she thought her daughter was going to die. So instead of like trying to
Yep.
fight the system anymore, because they were doing it for like a long period of time, like I think it was over a year, she actually took her life.
Yep.
And she's committed suicide. And then for whatever
Oh my
reason,
God. The mother did?
yeah, the mother committed suicide for her daughter. And for whatever
Jesus.
reason, obviously that probably spurned the staff in the hospital system.
Investigation.
Yeah, to do an investigation. Anyways, they did an investigation. They found that the hospital was liable for mistreating, her daughter, and I think they awarded her like millions and millions of dollars. Awarded the family, sorry,
Oh my God.
millions and millions of dollars.
Wow.
It's called the Kowalski.
Holy cow.
Yeah, the Kowalski family. It's crazy.
Okay. So I know we're coming up on time here. That is wild. I gotta read about that. We'll put all these notes in for different links. The theme for today has been be careful of the medical establishment, because there are some dangerous people out there. And advocate for yourself. If you believe you're not getting the right care, get a second opinion. If you believe you're being mistreated, report it, go to the police, do whatever you need to do to protect you and your family. I think that's really important. Was recently watching, I just put it in the chat, Killers of the Flower Moon. Have you seen that? The story of the Osage Nation and the birth of the FBI. So we're talking about not that long ago, in the late 1800s, the Osage was a tribe of Indians they had been moved around and put from reservation to reservation, but ended up settling in Osage, which was in Oklahoma. And the story follows someone returning from the war, one of the wars that they were being fought. And I'm getting a lot of reverb. Can you hear that, or is that just me? It's weird. So anyway, Leonardo DiCaprio's, the anti-hero, and he's coming back from war. Robert De Niro is his uncle, and they call him King. And this individual had, we'll say, taken advantage of the Osage Nation, lived among them, was collecting tax. And the Osage were a very wealthy tribe because they discovered an oil reserve on their land, on their reserve. And so they had the rights. And at the time, they were the richest people per capita on the planet. They had essentially each, a salary of a couple $1 million a year that was given to them as part of their equity ownership in this land. And the Osage tribe is not as well off today because it says they had a lot of heirs and a lot of births, but they were murdered one by one. And this individual King, or the uncle of Leonardo DiCaprio's character, was trying to hoard their land rights and the rights to their oil. But they would poison these individuals. They would marry them. And then Leonardo DiCaprio's character was giving his wife insulin because she was diabetic, and they were putting drugs or poison in the insulin shots so that each one of them one by one would die. And then eventually she was,
Wow.
Spoiler alert, she was freed from this, liberated from this death sentence, and awarded, justice, and he went to jail. But I mean, imagine marrying your wife's family for money, marrying your wife for money, and then one by one killing all her relatives, so eventually that money would pass to you. It was like Saltburn, but in the Osage, and it's a true story.
Wow.
Have you seen Saltburn, by the way?
Oh, no.
Oh my God! All right, you need to watch Saltburn as well. We don't watch enough movies here,
Well,
apparently, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's there are dangerous people out there. Protect your neck.
I think insulin can be insulin could be a whole topic of conversation. It's especially prevalent right now with Biden, who says he capped the insulin cost to $35. I think that's something we could talk about in the future. I think that could be really interesting.
Hey, wait, the way you said that he said he did. What do you?
No, he probably did cap the cost of insulin at $35.
Yeah, for some people.
For Medicare patients, specifically Medicare patients.
Yeah, for Medicare patients. Yep.
But I think the average Medicare patients was paying, but he's touting it as like this huge accomplishment, but the average Medicare patient was probably paying $53 per month.
But it should be capped for everybody across the board. Like,
it should
anybody
be capped for
who's
everybody.
on insulin should.
Yeah.
Or
100%.
Here's a wild thought. It should be covered 100% for everybody who needs insulin, because type 2 diabetes is not just it's not people who, despite the stigma and the thoughts around it, these are not people that are diabetic because of their own activities or because of their own decisions. It's because their immune system,
they have type 1 diabetes,
decided to attack their pancreas.
Right.
And so, this is something that is, misunderstood, but, gouging patients that need life-saving medication every day to stay alive is not only sinful, but it's criminal.
Covering the cost, I'm not sure about, but capping the cost 100%. I mean, if we cover the cost, that may raise premiums, insurance premiums. So I'm not sure if that, what that would do to the system, but for sure, 100% in support of capping costs. Paying for something like this, the potential there. But I honestly think it's the the pharmaceutical companies and that are working with the PBMs and insurance companies and all this stuff that goes on in the background that makes our system like really antiquated
Yeah.
and not work as well. And we're like what 37th in the world, and we're the richest country in the world. Doesn't make any sense. How are we doing, like 23 trillion in revenue to our country, and
GDP. Yep.
doesn't make any freaking sense.
Yeah, well, it does make sense. It does. It's not right, but it makes sense. The reason is that we have this middleman in our country called the insurance company that takes a cut every time you get sick or takes a cut every time you need insulin. And so we shouldn't have to pay the insurance company to get insulin. It's a life-saving medication. Take them out of the equation and it pays for itself, right? The person who invented insulin gave it away, gave the patent away so that everybody could have access to it for free. That was their intent. And we can cover the insurance industry on our next episode.
Yeah, let's do that. All right,
Listen,
let's talk about it.
Listen, I got to jump off for 3:00. Frank, always fun, and look forward to seeing the edit. We'll talk to you soon, brother.
Talk soon. Bye.